Well, my name's Tom Bean, and there's a very informal group of us Flagstaffians that are the Flagstaff Cloud Appreciators. We have occasional meetings, and we've been doing this for some time now. And how's that? Okay. So I'm going to tell just a little bit about how we have been meeting for over 6.5 years now in different venues, and being part of the Festival of Science is a fabulous opportunity. So I'm so glad to be here. I'll be showing you a bunch of pictures, not by myself, but mostly by our members who I put out an appeal to see if they had shots they wanted to share. And so we'll be looking at some of those in a couple of short videos that were submitted too. So, so cooked up this idea for the cloud after being a member of the Cloud Appreciation Society, which is an international bunch. But I thought we could have our own little group here. So we're the Flagstaff Cloud Appreciators, and we met at the City Library in, when was that? In January of 2018. And we had only a few meetings, but by October of 2019, we were part of the science festival. So here we are, well over 100 people attended the meeting in the auditorium there. And we'll get closer to the mic. And then, of course, COVID came along and we kind of got shut down. But we've been doing occasional meetings. And if you want to be a member, all you have to do to qualify is to give me your email address, and I'll put you on the list, and you'll be made aware of anything that's coming up. So the first thing I'm going to show is a video by another Flagstaff photographer, KGY, and this wasn't filmed it's the monsoon in Flagstaff area, but it's maybe 8 or 10 years ago, I guess. Oop, did I go? Oop, what? Okay, got it. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, so let's watch this little oops. No. Okay, one more time. Well, thank you, Cage, for letting me show your video. It's wonderful. And so what I've got here now are a series of pictures that some of our members submitted. This is the only black and white picture, this one from Bill Waters. This seems like a very painterly picture to me. It is a photograph out at Wapatki, but the sky reminds me of something you might have seen in the Thomas Moran painting. And this picture taken by Stuart Aitchison up by Bluff, it's classic field of cumulus clouds, but these are the ones that are cumulus, I think they're called, very humble. They are wider than they are tall. On the other end of it, we see Sarah Day's picture has some cumulus congestus, which are taller than they are wide. And these are the ones that Brian was mentioning, can keep building up. This is a typical August summer afternoon, and the atmosphere is unstable, and some of these clouds may rise up and turn into a cumulonimbus, maybe quite soon after this picture was taken. Collis, lovely, a different kind of cloud, as Brian was explaining. These are made of ice crystals, and they're much higher, very wispy, and beautiful composition here with these. And Flagstaff is a great place to see this type of cloud, lenticularis, and they tend to form downwind of the peaks. And sometimes, as in this particular day, the atmosphere was very stable, I guess, moving over the peaks and smooth laminar flow, but there was different amounts of water vapor at different layers of the atmosphere, and so it formed a cloud that looks like a stack of plates. This is a similar form thing, sort of a lenticularis, but it's perched right on top of the peaks, and this is a type of cloud called a cap cloud. And this is, it's about the only cloud in the sky, it looks like, this morning. But then another picture by Susan Joy taken at sunset the same day. So there's always something going on, and this is a good example, I guess, of the different colors that you get at the end of the day. Carol Cruz is out in East Flagstaff in the Doney Park area. But again, you see another one of those stack of plate lenticulars, and sunset with all the different colors of the clouds, depending on how high they are, what color the light is, or in the case of the kind of dark purpley clouds, they are no longer in the sunlight, they're in the shadow, and they're much darker, and you have that purple hue. And then Ernie Webb, who's here tonight, this is not a cloud, but it's the title of our program is Look Up, There's Lots to See. So this was an event on May 11th. He photographed from the Peaks senior living area up there. And this is the aurora on that night. And I think we'll see more of that with Jeremy and David. And of course, one of our monsoon thunderstorms after it's turned dark. David Schaefer wanted to share this picture of a pyrocumulus. This must have been the first day of the Schultz fire, which I think was on a Sunday, when it really exploded, and all that hot air rising wasn't just smoke. It eventually started forming clouds that involve water vapor too. And then this from Bruce Steinhaus, he wanted to, these two pictures are both taken at the same place, only one is facing the sun. The one on the left is crepuscular rays that are caused by the sun setting behind probably clouds that are just out of sight here. So there's differences between light and shadowy areas, so the bright beams and the darker shadows in between them. But on this particular day, it was very, if you turned 180 degrees and turned completely away from the sun and looked in the opposite direction, you can see that the rays continue on. So they go over your head and then disappear and converge at what's called the anti-solar point, looking at the opposite direction. So this is crepuscular rays and anti-crepuscular rays on this particular August sunset. Isn't a nice example of a sun pillar? That's what it's called. Where the sun, this is on, well, it's like New Year's Eve. It's a cold sun rise, I think it is. Yeah, this is, and what's happening here is the sun is, is perhaps a few degrees even below the horizon, but the sun is shining in the air, at least the near ground air is full of flat little ice crystals. And not enough that you would notice them necessarily, but they're enough to reflect the light. And this is a fairly rare thing to see here. It's a really good example of it. And another cloud situation here, the sun is, this is Andy Gould. He's in Patagonia, not the country or the part of South America, but southern part of Arizona. But you can see he was really amazed by the shadows of the mountains and how they are falling on the cloud. So the sun is quite low here, enough to create a shadow that then puts some of the cloud layer above it into shadow. And then finally, another short video. This one's only, what, 40 seconds, I think. But the title of our program here is Look Up, There's Lots to See. Well, in this case, Peter was in an airplane looking down where there was lots to see as he flew between Texas and Phoenix on June 4th. He said he appeared to be the only person interested in looking out the window. And the pilot mentioned something about there was weather that they were, and he was shooting pictures for 30 minutes as they flew by this really extended line of storms over Oklahoma. So I'm just going to turn this on and you'll see a lot of flashing. The sound is on, but you can hear the familiar bong of an airplane interior, but then it's just jet noise. Whoa is right. That's a lightning storm. So that's concludes my part of it. But if you want to join, it's tom@tombean.com, and you'll become a full-fledged member in good standing. And so
Well, I'm pretty excited to be here for a few minutes tonight to share with you some photos of cloudscapes that were part of a really fun storm chase near Four Corners earlier this summer, and then also some interesting night sky phenomena that we were able to witness around here recently as well. So last week, you may have noticed some gorgeous cloudscapes up in the sky about this same time last week as a trough dipped down into Arizona. And it spread a jet streak across a little bit of moisture up at altitude, and that helped to give us a really interesting mix of cirrus and cirrocumulus and altocumulus clouds with a lot of detail in them. Now you can clearly, when you look at this, visualize a highway of fast-moving air dragging these clouds across the sky. You can watch them moving. I think that's really interesting to get this depiction of what's happening high up in the atmosphere at times like this. Now, it's these high-speed, upper-level winds that are a key ingredient that storm chasers in particular are also interested in watching for. It's one of these ingredients that when it's paired with instability and with moisture, it's a recipe for spectacular, strong cloudscapes. And this year, varying combinations of those elements came to lead me out to the plains. I just want to take a quick detour here and just show some of the things that these kind of winds can do for the clouds that we look at, the kind of structure that they can build in the lower levels or the upper levels. As you see these cumulonimbus rocketing skyward, you can see them moving quickly, almost like you're watching a time lapse, but in real time. Looking for cloud structures like wall clouds and tail clouds beneath supercells, all driven by these fast winds and abundant instability, or shelf clouds filled with lightning moving across the landscape and picking up some of those deep, warm sunset colors to illuminate things. Or mammatus at sunset is just one of the best ways to end a chase day. But not all those chase days work out. Not all these ingredients come together, and you're left with just a little bit of incipient clouds. So that's often the case around here in Arizona. We don't often get a mixture of these kind of ingredients that lead to really strong storms, but we're looking for them if you're interested in that kind of thing. And one of the times that tends to happen is around what we call monsoon transition season, which happens right around this time of year. Maybe not so strongly right now, but a lot of times we're looking for those troughs from the fall season to start dipping into maybe some lingering tropical or monsoon moisture. Well, this year, though, something interesting happened kind of in inverse. At the end of June, we had one of those troughs move through across some decent moisture, and that led to a fun chase up in the Four Corners area through Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Colorado. And what my initial hope was that this was going to happen around Monument Valley, that I'd be able to get over there and see something happening in there. And we did have some storms trying to build, but they just couldn't quite do it. And I had to find myself continuously drifting to the northeast along the highway, looking for where they'd finally take off. Looking at the wind-blown anvils like you see here was encouraging, but the storms just weren't very deep. But that one off in the distance that you see in the background there was starting to gain strength. And with the road network in this area being as sparse as it is, you have to make decisions well in advance and get cooking down the road. You can't hedge your bets. You have to get moving and make a commitment to one of those storms if you're going to see it. So I got heading to the northeast, trying to spot this thing, but was frustrated by the storm being behind hills and mesas and not being able to see it, even though I knew it was getting stronger and more interesting. And I finally found a south road that gave me an opportunity to hop up on it. And I was able to get a glimpse of this storm now as it's really gathering strength. And as it's starting to pick up reflections of that reddish landscape in the storm base, as well as beginning to also pick up some of that turquoise hues in the deep core of that storm as it's getting stronger and developing hail. And in fact, the hail drove me out of this spot. I had to get out of there and start getting back to the east before it passed me and put a lot of dents in the car. But that was worth it. Getting further to the east, this storm is now really showing a lot of interesting structure. It's more rugged than what you might see on the plains, but we've got a base here with that's well separated from the precipitation core that's loaded with all that hail and rain, and that's helping it to stay strong and get stronger as those stay separated and it doesn't collapse on itself. You can also look deeper into the background there that there is a ring of descending air here. There's air descending around the core of this storm because it's rotating. And that is called a rear flank downdraft. That's something that storm chasers are looking for interesting things to start happening in this area where a wall cloud is building. And in fact, not only is this whole thing rotating, but smaller circulations are developing within it. So we watch for that and see if anything else may develop within that area. Eventually, a few minutes later, it developed a high-based funnel outside that ring of rear flank downdraft precipitation. Meanwhile, within, it's dragging the hilltops with that wall cloud, which is such a menacing and interesting sight. So from here, I had to reposition again because the hail was starting to ding the car. And it's nice when you have a highway that's headed away from that hail. And fortunately, that was the case here. And I was able to get to a place where that wall cloud began to develop a smooth laminar appearance to it and to begin to tighten up into a thick funnel. And that funnel continued to get surrounded by that downdraft. It closed it off from any of the updraft air that was feeding the storm, and it tightened up and formed this narrow funnel that did a rope out sequence before my eyes there. That's the kind of thing I love seeing here in Arizona, just because of the spectacular and rare nature of those things. It's out over the open range and is just a spectacle of nature. This is a video showing some of that motion. So you can see that rear flank of downdraft is helping to enclose this rotating wall cloud as it drags the hilltops in the background. And we get the cool air here feeding a rough tail cloud into that wall cloud and that little funnel up at the top forming. The terrain, I think, also had an effect and an impact on kind of the structures and shapes and condensation of that cloud. And then later, as we saw that thicker funnel and me trying to dodge traffic to get over for a clear shot. So we do get these storms around here from time to time. And folks like Brian, we like to listen to his team and read their forecasts and see what things are coming up for us. Well, at the end of that, as the storm gusted out and dissipated, it left behind of that funnel a little alien vessel almost sitting there misting away in the distance before it finally collapsed. And that was my fun takeaway for that day. Really enjoyed that storm. But that leads us to a slightly different or a lot different topic, which is this atmosphere where the sun is heating our whole atmosphere. Down here in the troposphere, this is where all of these great storms and clouds take place, the things that we've been talking about. But up higher, that sunlight is not just heating down here and creating the weather that we see, but it's also allowing ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet can get to these upper levels of the real thin air in our atmosphere. And up there, it splits molecules, it rips electrons off of atoms, and it really charges up the atmosphere. We call that area the ionosphere. And different layers within there have different amounts of gases in them. And as those atoms and molecules get energized that way, when they come back to a resting state, they fluoresce, they emit light that we can see. And that creates a lot of interesting phenomena from air glow to aurora and other things. So here in Flagstaff, we have a great view to the west towards Vandenberg Air Force Base, or Space Force Base these days. And from there, we can watch these rocket launches, especially towards twilight. When it's twilight, the sunlight illuminates those engine gases, and we can see some pretty strange things in the sky. Now, one of these launches in July of 2023 led to a strange phenomenon that Dave, myself, and other photographers noticed, where there was just a touch of red that started to expand out of this rocket plume. This is all lit by the sun, but this was something else. As the rocket proceeded downrange, it left this red streamer. This could be explained by sunlight reflecting off the plume, but what was happening over here where the sunlight wasn't catching things? Why was that glowing red? It continued to glow like that for about another 45 minutes up in the sky. The camera was picking it up. Not easy at all for the eye to see, but the camera really loved it. Well, it turns out that this is an ionospheric hole. Some experts chimed in on what was going on here. And at that level of the atmosphere that these rockets were venting their engines or running their engines, they were releasing molecules that were interacting with oxygen ions. And as it interacted with those oxygen ions, it caused those to go back down to a default state. They were no longer ionized. And when that happened, they fluoresced red. So that neutralized that part of the ionosphere, it can disrupt radio communications, things like that. Happened again a month later in August, another similar effect seen from East Flagstaff here when we look at that. And of course, then it starts all over again the next day as UV light from the sun comes back in and splits those, knocks those electrons off. There was another interesting effect, November of last year, looks a lot like it, but this was something different. This was something not caused by a rocket. It's called a SAR arc, a stable auroral red arc. It has nothing to do with aurora though. There's a ring of a charged current running around our planet. And when the sun is at a very energetic state, it can really ramp up the charge in this. There's still a lot of research going into what exactly is happening, but it seems that that added charge can heat up areas of the atmosphere or the ionosphere below those ring currents and lead to fluorescence like this. They're very stable. They don't dance around. They just sit there and glow red. And your camera, probably today's cell phones, can capture these if that's happening. So now onto the real fun part. Earlier this year, May 10th, when we had a geomagnetic storm that really touched off some beautiful things far south in Arizona where we wouldn't expect to see these things. We headed out of Flagstaff away from a bunch of smoke and clouds that we otherwise love to get to a clear spot south of Holbrook where we could look at this. And at the time the sun started to set, we wondered what was going to happen. And indeed, there was red dancing aurora overhead. Eventually, we got to a point where it was energetic enough at a couple of outbursts over the night that we saw green, red, and blue aurora, that the red and green parts being even visible to the naked eye while the camera was loving all of it, the blues included. We even had a edgy cameo from a fireball on one of the shots. A lot of photographers across Arizona caught that one. And even though we don't see green that often here, I'm still really a fan of seeing blue and red and purple where they overlap together. I think that's just a wonderful color combination to see with this effect down here. We even got an enormous SAR arc as part of that display overhead and from horizon to horizon as the sky was just bruised with these reds and pinks, giving way to sunrise that next morning. And then this August 12th, during the Perseids, we had another outburst that led to some aurora visible again from here in Flagstaff, out here at Merriam Crater on Loop Road, and was able to composite the Perseids caught that night with some of the aurora that was dancing over the cinder cone. And I'm just going to leave with one video here to conclude what we saw. Solar maximum is right now, or we're heading into it. So there's plenty of other opportunities potentially. If you check out spaceweather.com, that can be a great place to look for possibilities like that. And that's it for me. And I'm going to ask David to come on up. We'll get yours loaded.
Really nice, Jeremy. So in the past, we have done these as cloud shows, and I was thinking this year, I've shown most of my clouds. Let's expand our horizons, and that's where we came up with look up, there's a lot to see. But not only look up, look down, look sideways, look behind you. So auroras, but also rocket launches. We can see a lot of rocket launches here, but this year we actually had a brief period of about a month where a certain number of launches from Florida were deorbiting the second stage just as it came across Arizona. So you could see these things plunging back into the atmosphere, and I caught a couple of those. So those will all be in the video that I present. But this morning, I went out to the overlook at Lowell Observatory. You have to catch our newest comet. And I think we zoom in on this a little bit. There we go. So there it is. This thing will be getting brighter. It has tripled in brightness in just the last couple of weeks. It's expected to be visible to the naked eye in another week or two. And some expectations, it may even be bright enough to see in the day. This will be something worth looking up to see. I'm just going to hold on this for a minute.
Did Jeremy hand off the microphone?
I'm sorry?
Did Jeremy hand off the microphone?
Yeah, they handed it off to him.
Okay. I couldn't see it anyway. I couldn't talk.
Thank you.